So we're going to start with corrections. I was in DC all yesterday. So we're going to start with Larry, and I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was in DC yesterday. I didn't use the board. Oh, Jack, okay. Jack? You were such a highlight last year. Actually, Jack's presentation last year, I think we learned an awful lot about two things. We learned about Department of Corrections and the incredible job that they do. And the second thing we learned, which sort of tracked with our courthouse, was the inefficiency of buildings that are done by the county relative to the floor maintenance, and relative to the life of those buildings, and what that causes downstream for the county in operating costs, and then potentially larger issues relative to capacity, et cetera. Jack?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Right. Get my hands still moving, I'll be great. All right, well, good morning, everybody. All right, so last year we came and discussed the issues that were facing the detention center. And so this year, just want to kind of go over where we are in terms of the facility, in terms of our population, and also talk a little bit about two issues that are going to impact a need for a new facility and what size that facility is going to potentially be. So, right now we've got a lot of issues with the current operation, security equipment. Main controls, we're going to highlight these in a second. Cell unit doors that don't function. Kitchen equipment, surgery issues that actually back up into the kitchen. Medical and mental health space inadequacies. Structural damage to the exterior that also is affecting our interior, and some HVAC issues. And actually, before I go any further, let me introduce Tricia Bond, Deputy Director. She's our lead on working with our consultant, CDI, Kim, on the facility. All right, so obviously recently we had the code stretch. During that, we had cell blocks that were actually at 44 degrees. So you can imagine you've got cell block 40 inmates and it's 44 degrees. A lot of people say, well, you know, everybody has to deal with that, or schools had to deal with it, except they're there 24/7. What we actually had to do in a couple of cases is consolidate our population and move those inmates out of there. Obviously, the stress and tension in the facility was pretty high. And it creates a lot of safety issues. At one point, I was called down by the captain. We were moving inmates. We were trying to get the inmates to understand that we were going to move them. They said, well, we told them before we move, we have to count. They said, we're not locked in. You know, I go down, I'm standing there facing our maximum security inmates, and I think Trish came down, and they're like, nah, we ain't locking in because we don't trust what you're saying. You haven't fixed this. It's been going on for a long time. You got to do something. Fortunately, we explained it, and they finally did. These are just correspondence between our staff, with me actually, and our facilities partners talking about temperatures and issues in the facilities. Again, emails talking about the issues with the core temperatures. Even at one point, we had electric heaters in some of our work areas. We had a commitment office, which is where all our intakes come into, we have to look at all the commitment documents. It was in the 40s down there. I had officers with hats and coats on. This one might have been the biggest issue. In the detention center, we have an intercom system that is based on the main control center. So what happens is, whenever an officer goes through a security door or enters a unit, they hit a call box. The call box goes back to the main control center. In order for them to open the door, a camera activates on top of that call box so that the main control center can look and see, is that a staff person or is it something else, like an inmate pressing the call box? That went out. The whole facility, it was out. We had people come in from out of state to try to troubleshoot it. It eventually got to the point where it could not be fixed. What that did is it created a situation where an officer went to go through a door, the call box didn't work, they had to go on the radio. So if you've got 20-some different posts with officers going to doors, our radio chatter is nonstop, which means if I am an officer and I have a code, we call it a 1010 code, or there's an assault, and you've got people asking the control center to open doors, what we call is sometimes you can't get on the radio, and we've had that happen at least once, because we're constantly having chatter back and forth about opening the doors instead of hitting a call box and having the officer see it. That was a real safety. This is just a quote of what it would cost. That's what that control center panel looks like when it went out. The total replacement, I think it's even going above $312,000. We're in the process of doing that now. So you can see to fix the existing equipment, we're already spending a pretty fair amount of money on something we know is eventually going to be replaced. This is also another issue. We are now starting to see some cell doors pop open by themselves. We have a close confinement unit, which we use for intense behavior issues as well as suicide watch. Last week, our security chief said, I got video of them just walking out of the set. The door popped open without anybody hitting a button. That's a picture of the cell where that happened. We also have doors that, due to settlement, what happens is the track of the door won't open because of the aging of the facility. That's one of the doors where that's happening. We have several of those. Kitchen equipment. We continue to have breakdowns of our kitchen. That's just a list of some of the things that are going on. Our steamers, our kettles, ovens, sinks, a lot of issues with water. We've been cited by the health department on a number of occasions because we continue to have problems with water, and sometimes that water actually comes up underneath the tiles. That's a picture of our broken kettle. Some of the plumbing issues. This is the most disgusting. That's our kitchen, that's sewage back. Not good when you have sewers that back up and go into your kitchen. That requires complete shutdown, complete cleanup of the kitchen, and obviously you've got to go to alternative feeding. And I can show you a good picture of our deputy director out in another area bagging up lunches when that happened. It's a major operational issue. Again, that's water coming up underneath the floor. We've dug that floor up probably half a dozen times. Some structural damage. This is our recreation yard. You can see the fencing over the top, security fencing. These are concrete tiles. We shut this whole yard down on a couple occasions. happens, these tiles are popping off, and actually, on one occasion, one fell off, almost hit an inmate in the head. So we've had to do repairs on that. One of the things I think is important to point out, and that's a picture of one of the tiles that actually popped out of that. These are windows. You can actually start to see where all the block around that window, eventually that's a bigger security issue, where you've got a secure cell window and you're starting to have stuff pop out of it. Let me also point out one thing about these repairs. So every time we get a contractor that comes in, they have to fix either our HVAC system, cell doors, the control center, the kitchen equipment. What that means is we just can't have people walk in with tools and equipment. That means every time a contractor comes in, we've also got to put a correctional officer on, because they bring in tools that we have to make sure are accounted for. So we have to inventory every tool, make sure that whatever they bring in, they also take out. So that's a cost for security. And it's not like we have extra officers just sitting around. They're usually staffed and on post, which means when we have contractors come in, we also then have to pay overtime. Another big issue is our medical and mental health space. We have a very limited medical and mental health unit. We have HIPAA violations due to lack of privacy, along with increased need for private mental health consultation. One of the things that's happening in correctional institutions across the country is a big increase in inmates with mental health issues. So, at this point, 52% of our population is receiving psychotropic medications. What's that mean? You can't just have a psychiatrist handing out meds. They also have to do follow-up and have appointments with folks to make sure that medication's working, see how they're progressing via medication, deal with transition planning so when they get out, we have a plan in place. All that requires confidential settings. I'm going to show you in a second what that looks like. So we have an increased number of people seeing our mental health person. We also are seeing a lot of people that need detox. We have a lack of medical space for that. We're also now using non-designated space to detox people. Lack of sufficient and centralized suicide watch cells. You're going to see a bar chart in a second that's going to show you a major spike in people going on suicide watch. And there are staffing issues when we have people on constant watch, whether that's direct observation or we do 15-minute checks. Those statuses are determined by our mental health staff. So this might not be the best picture, but this is our psychiatrist's office. This door leads out to our visual waiting area. To the right of that is where our PA does his exams. Behind it is the health service administrator and all the files. So you literally can have a psychiatrist talking with somebody or another mental health professional, and you've got people to the right of you. And if all that is to the right on this side of the wall is the exam room, there's a privacy screen right there. If you talk low, it might be okay, but I can tell you, I've been in there, I've been talking to the PA on the other side, and I can hear the psychiatrist talking. That's not a good situation. These are the two medical cells. We've actually had cases where inmates go out to the hospital, they're treated, ready to come back, but because we don't have a full medical suite, we can't bring them back. So a lot of people say, well, all right, so you have to be at the hospital a little bit longer. That's also two correctional officers that are out at the hospital. If you read about escapes that happen in correctional environments, most of them happen at outside appointments in the hospitals. Every time I have two officers out with an inmate at a hospital, we don't sleep too well, because that's where it happens. Last couple of years, there have been several escapes that have made the paper. We had one incident up in Washington County where a correctional officer was killed. White inmate took his weapon, shot and killed him, and went out on a high-speed chase and created pretty major havoc in that community. That is our premise. Also medical storage area. This is the chart we're talking about. This is 2016, 2017. These are the placements on Suicide Watch. Not much difference, a little bit of a peak there from 16 to 17. The number of inmates on watch slightly picked up, but the days that they're on Suicide Watch, you can see a major increase from 188 to 627. So we've got 2 Suicide Watch cells that are designated. When we have as many as 6 people on Suicide Watch, we often have them at our central booking facility, our medical unit, our Suicide Watch cells, and whatever else we have to use. So instead of one officer maybe being able to observe that, we now have an officer here, one officer there, and another officer in the third location. That's staffing inefficiency. I want to also just get into our population, just give you an idea about how things are running. So this is the total population. These are our total treatments. If you look across the last 2 years, our average daily population is slightly increasing as we go out from 15 to 16 to 17. So probably the biggest part of that is the increase in our federal housing. There's good and bad to that. The good is they generate revenue. We lease beds to the federal government. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Marshals. This year, we're on track to bring in about $2.7 million in revenue for housing in this community. Just to get another snapshot of our admissions, detention center, booking center, you can see it's pretty consistent with admissions. A little bit of fluctuation, but not a lot. The whole purpose of this is to show you that we're not seeing any major spikes in our population, where we're getting a big increase or decrease in intakes, or our average daily population. Staying fairly consistent. Except, we think that there are 2 things that are going to impact that in the near future. So in October of 2017, major portions of the Justice Reinvestment Act went into effect. We're starting to evaluate what the impact of that's going to be and how it will affect our population. The highlights of that is a lot of drug offenses, the penalties were changed, and there's also an effort to guide people out to treatment. There's something called a 8507. That's a section of the Health Services article that allows a judge to take someone that's incarcerated, have them evaluated, and as appropriate, excuse me, have them sent to a treatment bed. We've had that program for years, except this is what was happening. I would get an 8505 evaluation and an 8507 order, and I would sit. There were a lack of beds in the state. And you probably read a little bit about that because it's also impacted mental health beds. We get inmates backed up not just for transfers to treatment, but also for transfers to mental health treatment. So what happens is I sit 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and that's about the average. Oh, we have a bed for you. No thanks, I'm about to get out. So that's what was happening, we weren't being diverted. Well, the law changed that now says they have 30 days to get them to that treatment bed. So what the state did is they ramped up to get treatment beds. They expect that we're going to start to see people. We weren't seeing it because inmates were saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm about to finish my sentence. Why am I going to go to a 6-month inpatient treatment where I can just do a couple of months and I'm out and I'm done? The other big thing is across the state, jails were now mandated to give 10 days of good conduct time for every 30 days that an inmate was sentenced, except for crimes of violence, and there are some exceptions about certain drug offenses. So what happens is, instead of getting 5 days a month, you're now getting 10. You can imagine what the impact of that is. You get good conduct credit. It's going from 5 days to 10. We're also starting, in some cases, people are getting jobs. They're actually only serving half their sentences. That means people will move out quicker. They're going to start to roll out a little bit faster. There's also some issues about the division of parole and probation on certain things, getting people into treatment or other programming. One of our major offenses is violation of probation. So you have a lot of people that go out, they go on probation, they have violations. Often it's because they relapse or have issues. There's a lot of things in place now to get them diverted to treatment instead of bringing them back to jail. They also get other benefits by successful completion of their supervision, and they can also get expungement if their behavior is good. All right. The next section is something that is called administrative release. So what they've done now, if you get a sentence of 6 months or more, and it's for nonviolent offense, that you'll be released from confinement after you serve 1/4 of that sentence. And it's not a parole hearing, or a parole commissioner has to have a formal hearing and get information and then make a decision. It's an automatic release. So if I have a 16-month sentence for burglary, I go into the detention center, I comply with my program, I don't have to make rule violations. After 4 months, I get a piece of paper that says I'm going to be released. There's no discretion. It's automatic. Often they have these conditions about drug and alcohol treatment, mental health treatment, residential program treatment. And it's for everyone serving a sentence other than for a crime of violence. And in the statute, in the Maryland statute, there's a list of what those offenses are. There are the typical things: robbery, assaults, robbery with a deadly weapon, those kinds of things. The next thing that's going to impact our population that we have to take into account, you may have read some things, but a while back, the Attorney General of Maryland made a ruling that cash bail is unconstitutional, and that we really shouldn't be holding people up. So this is what was kind of happening. If I was poor, and I might have got a charge for shoplifting, theft, I go before a commissioner, maybe my record's not that great, and I get a $1,000 8% bail, which means if I come up with $100, I get out. Well, if I'm poor, I might not have $100. We don't see a lot of that, but we do have some inmates still with low bond, they can't get out. So one of the things that's been talked about is that there are jurisdictions that have intensive pretrial supervision programs, where that same person could be placed under a pretrial program where they would be required to report daily, wear an ankle bracelet, be subject to drug and alcohol testing, and any other conditions. And you have staff monitor this. Howard County is the only metropolitan county that does not have a program like that. We have a bare bones pretrial program that's run by our probation office. It's based upon a judge's will to put that person in there. Most jurisdictions that have good, vibrant pretrial programs use a screening instrument that's validated, that's been tested in other jurisdictions. Often there's things that come out of the Department of Justice that look at which of these instruments have the best outcomes, and it's basically looking at variables. Do you have a place to live? Do you have a job? Have you failed to report to other court dates? Those factors are looked at, scored, and then you make a recommendation. we're starting the process of exploring that. It's my belief, and I will say this, our judges are very good about, I think, who they incarcerate and who they don't. There are other jurisdictions where this has had major impact. They've diverted a lot of people out of the jail system. I think with us, we're probably talking 10%. In your handout, there's an article that just came out, talks about the need for good pretrial supervision programs. I don't want to get too much into it, but that'll give you a pretty good sense of what that's about. So, where does, yeah?
Roughly what percentage of the inmates would be pretrial holding?
There's, right now, we're about maybe high 50s to 60% pretrial, and about maybe 42% sentence. Of that pretrial population, you know, I'm looking at, and I think we, you know, sort of got rough look at this. We think it's about maybe 10% who would qualify for this pretrial supervision program. All right. So, in looking at the need for a new facility, obviously we've got to take into account those issues that we just brought up. We've got to take into account what the money we're spending on repairs. So the idea is, what kind of new facility would we be looking at? One of the things that we're looking at is a facility that features one point of offender entry. Right now, the way it works is if you're arrested and booked by the police, you go in one door. If you're coming from court, you're a direct transfer in on a sentence, or if you're transferred, you come in through another door. That's not efficient. We need something that expands our mental health and medical services, that allows us to more efficiently manage people on suicide watch, medical observation. The other thing is, right now, the way we're set up is our officers are like a lot like police officers from the street. They are assigned to a section, they go in and out of cell blocks. We want something where it puts the officer in the cell block and they have direct supervision. That provides better security and safety. And then we need a more efficient workflow design, obviously with new building systems. So, what's that look like? So, we've got the current facility, and then directly behind our facility is space that we can put a new facility in. So we're not going into another area of the county. We have space right now where the jail is that our consultants think can fit that footprint. That looks like a big jumbled mess, but I'll try to make it so that I can explain. So what would happen is, all of this area would be our intake processing with expanded medical services right behind it. This is our administrative support, programming, and systems, mechanical room, dietary operations, warehouse. These are all the cell blocks. So you have one main corridor as people came in, they got processed, they go to our intake unit. This is direct observation, so right here is where the officers would be. They would have direct vision of that entire cell block. We often have fights now, the officers know it. If I come into a cell block and they go around and they want to fight, they know I'm not coming back for a while. So when I walk out, they know they got about 40 minutes before I come back in. We try to switch it up. If you have an officer directly in that unit, you can kind of get a good idea of what's going on all the time.
Jack, I'm in charge of managing the time on this. Can you take us to a couple things? One, the cost, what you're looking at in cost, and what you're looking at in time frame.
All right, so our consultants that give us this great big book with all this information in it. And what we had to do is go through the design process. And that's what we've been doing for the last year. And we keep asking them, what's this going to cost? What's this going to cost? Because Holly keeps asking me, what's this going to cost? And the exec occasionally asks, what's this going to cost? And what they tell us is, we've got to get it to a cost analyst. You guys even haven't finished designing it yet. Well, we are finished. We just finished a week ago. The schematic design is done. That's what I showed you up there. The footprint is laid out. They're sending it to their cost analyst. We expect to get that back March 1st. Ballpark, I think they're saying about $75 to $85 million. However, that's on the design of about a little bit less than I think 400 beds, about that. What we've got to decide is, what's the impact of the Justice Reinvestment Act? What's the impact of the pretrial program that we think we can implement in here? And what's that going to be? Well, Justice Reinvestment just went into effect October 1st of last year. That's only about a 3-month period. It's hard for us to tell. Are judges now adjusting sentences so that, hey, instead of giving you a year, I'm giving you 18 months because I don't want you getting those 10 days good conduct credit and getting out that? We're trying to assess that now. So it could be a $80 million project, or we might come back with a little bit more time, be able to evaluate the impact of those two issues and see, you know what, we can drop a housing unit and maybe it's going to be a $60 million project. I know that's not a great answer because everybody likes to have firm and hard stuff. I can't give you that because I don't have a crystal ball that says, oh, this is how this will play out.
And how are we looking in terms of if you had to, if you do it in terms of planning?
So the timeline is this. Schematic design is done. Site work is what's happening now. As of yesterday, or the day before, we have people in the back of our jail doing soil testing. We've got these big bore machines, they're checking out, to figure out what kind of, what do they call that, foundation has to be put in based on that. We've got to figure out how to drain out some streams and other things. That's going to probably be about a year period of all that. And then we've got to do some other site work that would probably take a year to 18 months. Then after that, it's about 2 years of construction. So you're looking at best about a 3-year to 4-year timeline. And obviously, there are other demands, schools. Last year, I had to follow the school system. And it's like, you know, where do you put your money? I'm not a big, I wasn't a big believer in this. When we first got this, I didn't think we needed to replace the facility, except the guy, the consultant, he's sitting there telling us, this is out of date, this has to be replaced. He's going through every major system. And I finally jokingly said, well, what you're saying is we're going to blow it up and build a new one. He said, you open the door, that's exactly what we do.
How old is the existing facility, and what's the lifespan of the one you projected?
How old is the current facility? 1982, and then there were 2 additions after that. In the
What about compliance as far as, are we on borderline complying with federal, state law with our facility?
Excellent. We are definitely in violation of HIPAA. One of the things is we have to manage liability. We do the best we can to try to keep the privacy issues of mental health staff great about doing what they can. The fact is, we have a medical unit that's really designed with the original, when I talked about the 2 additions, you have a facility that's designed with the first phase of the jail, and then you add on 150 beds. We're basically operating medical units about the size of we should be. And they're privacy issues. Compliance with standards, we're in violation of the Prison Rape Elimination Act because we right now do not have separate housing for juveniles. That's a completely different issue. The new facility would take that. We also have a couple other issues that we need to work around to make sure we're compliant.
Quick question, of the total cost, what would be the breakdown between county, state, and federal funding?
It is 100% county funding.
So it's all county, there's no way to do state or federal?
There is a state program, but it's usually based on not that you need a new building, that you need more beds. And then Trish actually used to work in that unit. We both came from the state prison system. Her background was there. Usually the priority is given to people that need to add on. We went before them, and I can tell you, there were 5 other counties that went before us. They were parsing over whether they give them $100,000. I walked up, and I think what were we asking for? $70 million at that time. The lady that was the chair of that group looked at me and basically shook her head and said, look, I get it. You're parsing with St. Mary's whether to give them $1 million or $100,000. I'm not going to ask you. She said, no, you're not getting $70 million. We might be able to get a small chunk, but it's going to be difficult because we don't need more beds. We need new.
Jack, here's a question for you that sort of gets on the look at the courthouse. This is a building 18 to 35 years. It's falling apart. So looking backwards and then looking forwards relative to the design, if you look back at how we did it, what's your criticism with hindsight in terms of what we did in designing and building that property that we're only getting this light out of it?
I guess the first thing is, at the time that it was built, that was the model of how correctional facilities operated. The direct supervision model came in right about after that, late 80s, 90s, mid 80s. So they built it, and right after that, the idea of direct supervision came in. So, it should have been obviously a direct supervision unit. It's a lot safer, a lot more efficient.
But I'm talking about just the structure of the building itself. Not the design, we can always question, because things will always change, but the building falling apart.
That's a better question for Jim.
He's got a package of stuff. Well, we can address it, because I think that's relative to when we go to the new one. I get the sense, typically it's a jail, it's an easy thing to short in terms of how we're building and how we're designing, because it doesn't have the cachet of the school, of the library, of other things that we want college to do. But we pay for that over and over by not doing it correctly. And the question is, how do we get, if we're going to spend $60 to $85 million, how do we get a building that's going to be the right investment for the county and for the taxpayers in terms of it's.
I don't know what was done then. I think the best thing we did is get a good consultant with a track record. This company has a track record. They were one of 8, 9, 10 vendors. Trish checked out their track record. She has contacts from her previous experience. These folks were selected. They're good. That's the answer I can give. The issue is, and you've got a lot of demands for funding to go to different things. I think we're at the point right now is, how long can we keep pumping money in to fix the current thing, plus avoid liability lawsuits? I give credit to our staff for all the workarounds that they can get this done. How do we get the inefficiencies? I guarantee you, we can drop overtime significantly if we get it more efficient building. Because right now, somebody goes on suicide watch. If we outgrow those 2 cells of medical, we're now expanding staff. And that's not like, oh, you're just sitting around doing nothing. No, you're on overtime. You've got that status.
Just to drill down a little further, obviously we're in a group that looks at dollars.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the 2 big questions here, you've talked about compliance several times, and that we talked about HIPAA and some other violations. What is the cost of non-compliance? Because I know with the courthouse, Judge Gelfman was able to specifically say, they've given us a break for X amount of time, but that break is about to end and they're going to start hitting us with it. And then the other thing is, what would be the operations and maintenance, remediation costs of just continuing to patch the thing up? So I think those would be 2 very important numbers, so that okay, what's the cost of doing nothing?
Well, 2 things. One, I can tell you we've avoided lawsuits to date over the HIPAA issue, and I can't tell you that that's going to keep happening. We talked about this recently. I really expect at some point that's going to be an issue. Everybody we brought in looks at that and says, oh, not good. The cost of not being TRIA compliant with the feds means they haven't imposed it yet because we show them all the mitigation and workarounds that we're doing. But they could say, you know what, that's nice. And we show them the new plans when they come in. But they could come in one time and say, you know what, that's not good enough. You've been giving us the story for 5 years. So the penalty is that the county, not just the Department of Corrections, the county would not be eligible for federal Department of Justice grant funds. I don't know what Chief Gardner gets, but if they played hardline and they said, you're not getting DOJ funding, I bet it would cost him quite a bit. We get grants out of DOJ. So it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant money. It's a matter of what group of auditors is going to come in and say, you know what, we've seen these plans for a while, but we don't see any brick and mortar out there. Is this just a snow job? Or are you really working on this? When they see this and they see that, they know we're in the process. And I think that's good faith that we're trying to remedy this. How long that could go, I don't know.
We have to move. We gotta move on. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's a good segue for you, Jim.
It's all Jim's fault.
Last year, Jim gave us, showed us, it was a great graph on roads.
Round two.
Okay. Well, we talked about that with both the county executive and the council. They made it much easier for us to see what we needed to start putting some money around some real large problems.
I had three things I wanted to talk about. Jack took over 2/3.
Sorry.
The issue with the jail was that I don't think the building per se is in terrible shape, it's just dysfunctional. And the project started off as a renovation. That was the history. And we got into it, we came up with a plan to renovate the facility. But just like the courthouse, we have a building that we could renovate. The way it worked, the construction was just not acceptable to county detention center operators. So another question, we throw $20–30 million into a building that's still it's up to speed, but it's dysfunctional. That's really the policy choices that we've said that the best answer is to start over and do it the right way. So that's really the dilemma. I think we could go back and get another 30 years out of the building, but we still have all these functional problems, just like we had with the old courthouse. Could have renovated it, but 20 years from now, we're back to Brian Wolf again about it. So the big issue with that is obviously the money, and we're probably going to have to figure out another way to finance that, and then probably next year we'll be back talking about those choices on this. I had two other things. One is the road system on the maintenance side, but on the capital side, we have up to recently paid for most of our road projects with the excise tax that we get from new construction and major renovations. And that fund is pretty much tapped out. It's used, committed, it's been spent, or committed to projects in the pipeline. So we don't have a new source of revenue to add any new capital road projects to the budget, which is a huge issue for us, particularly with this county redevelops and changes. We're not building any new roads per se, it's always fixing what we have, we're adding lanes, improving that, but there's still a staggering amount of stuff that has to be done. And a lot of the issue still is working with the state on partnerships. It's hard to do that when you don't have money to try to leverage their funds. So from a policy standpoint, we have to revisit the issue, how we're going to pay for roads. Right now, it's back to competing with the school system and everything else in the general fund, unless we can find a way to readjust the excise tax or change that. So that's a huge policy question I hope that perhaps you can think about. The other issue, which is the highway, the maintenance, which I have my annual charts that I'll pass around. This is our report card of our highway system. We go out and physically check the road system, every road over a 2-year period, and rate the road based on its condition. And the assessment is what you see in these graphs. And basically, we are not keeping up with our road resurfacing or road maintenance needs because of the budget system. There's a nationally established index that you use to try to determine what the condition of your road system is. Functional system should be around 85. Go down in the mid-70s and start to fall. So we're way behind. We have probably like a $50 million backlog of surfacing needs out there. And a year like this year is going to have a lot of havoc on us in the spring when things thaw out. It's start to get a lot more damage. We had a pretty brutal year also with water main tax too in a lot of the communities. So there's a lot of challenges out there. What we're going to do is our choices are, if we don't get the money, we're going to have to continue to patch, change the maintenance practices which people hate, which is basically the tar and chip piping process that we use. People hate that in this county, particularly the walkers and the bikers really get upset about that. So it's another issue that sooner or later we're going to have to deal with this problem. It's out there and it's not going ahead. So make the most of what we get on the county. So next year is going to be a challenge and we don't talk anything about that. So it's an issue that we have to address. And it's, at some point, there's only so far you can do with what the tools that we have.
Did you get any more money last year versus the year before?
That was basically the same. We did get we got $750,000, which is a gift from God from the state this year, which we're going to spend in the spring. Our track record is not up over the needs that we have. So the numbers are on the chart there. It's a dilemma. The problem again is you can put off fixing the roads for a year or two, but at some point they fall apart. You've got to rebuild them. That's the dilemma that we don't want to get into. So instead of just resurfacing, you have to dig everything up and start over again. The base goes in the road, and you've got big problems. That's what we're trying to avoid. Make the base saturated with water. That's the end of the piece for us. And we also have problems with the parking lots and all the other sidewalks and curb systems. Our intersections, we're under a mandate that every time we touch a road, even clean resurface, we have to bring them up to ADA standards, so we have to replace all the ramps and intersections, and it's another challenge. So a lot of the money that we get for resurfacing has to go besides just the roads, but to the ramps and the sidewalks and the curbs adjacent to them, so we don't get quite as much as we used to.
I'm helping
He
you.
doesn't.
I don't get a question, Jimmy?
You have to wait 2 months.
So other jurisdictions use bond funding, even for road resurfacing, because they think the useful life is maybe 20 years, or they use other forms of financing. Is that being discussed at all?
We've discussed that over the years, and the policy is not to use bond funding. We go back, way back, and then there was lots of debates about this as a possibility, but at this point, I think you used to use PAYGO or cash. Again, the dilemma is that with the limitation on our bond affordability cap, I don't know how we can squeeze more bond money into the picture without taking it from some other value program. Again, the alternative is to do different types of less life maintenance, which is a chip sealing or a seal coating, which is not really, to me, is solving the problem. That's the doom and gloom
Saving
speech.
money after good or good?
That seems to be what the pattern we have with some of the big issues. And we're not unique. Every other jurisdiction in the state has the same challenge, except the state has spent a tremendous amount of the gas tax money on resurfacing. I think they've done like 60% of their roads in the last 3 or 4 years have been resurfaced, because they're having a huge flux of gas money. Plus gasoline prices are going up, and they get a percentage now instead of a flat, so they're doing better than they were in the past. And we don't get hardly any gas tax money anymore. We get like, the county gets less than $1 million, $1 to $2 million a year. That's one of the big battles. We used to get much more from the state and the legislature, and the wisdom changed formula to give us more of the state and jurisdictions.
So
So there's a follow-up to what Craig was saying. If you could do, besides printing money, if we could look at the county budget, what, do you have any outside of the box ideas in terms of how we might deal with this? Not accountable for it, but if you could control how we might look at this, need a fund.
Well, I think again, it's one of those questions of do we do a 1 or 2 year bump to try to catch up so we don't have to do a retro replacement type of thing. That's the other one, obviously, is alternative financing, or if you want to get into bond funding again, but there's huge issues with that. So I just feel like it's an investment in our future. So I try to get every penny that we have at the end of the year in our operating budget, we don't spend on everything we put into road resurfaces. We're always looking for different ways to find money to, because this pays such a big dividend. Communities love it. You go in and resurface a neighborhood, it's like Christmas coming early to it's really a great thing.
Just a clarification, you said there's a huge issue with using bond funding for roads?
The policy was not to do it because they felt that, one is there's a debate about the service life of a road. It's usually 15 years. And so, yes, nowadays you can issue shorter term bonds, but the policy is going to counties to spend cash in this
That
tax.
goes back to that.
Well, it goes back to Hugh Nichols. Hugh felt there should be bond funds, and he proposed that the council disagreed. He went 4 or 5 years without any resurfacing because of that policy dispute. But there's been, that debate has come up. Again, there's everything else in the budget. There's a lot of things we spend cash on, and we have those debates as well about why not bonds, and get into what's the service life of that. And I think our bond affordability puts in pretty much 20-year bonds. We don't really factor in stuff with lower terms in terms of affordability.
Good question.
So I'll pass the hat as I walk around. The street needs some work on it. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jim. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, I guess Hoger was here talking about the courthouse, because that's going well.
Just a thought, relative to the jail, what's your perspective on
We're going to look at that and see if that's an option. I think there's been a few, I'm not aware of too many, if there's any question of the maintenance issue, we want to do the whole HMR or just do the construction. So that's something we're going to look at this year. See, there are some companies with a very specialized business. You really got to know what you're doing.
And I would think in some ways, I'm thinking other parts of the country relative to the operation.
Well, they're also privatized jails, the federal government, which is for profit, and cause a lot of debates.
Thank you. Let's go with, okay, Larry? This is obviously critical because when we look at all the debate going on development, the issues there, I know those who've been on this committee come back to, we don't have that much development start with. So it's, Seinfeld would say it's a story about nothing.
Kills it.
And he's gonna, Larry's gonna tell us, show you how I'm wrong, that we have land and leaders and opportunities to take advantage of the existing inventory.
All right, well, thank you very much, thanks, Steve. Today's presentation is largely driven by a lot of the questions that were asked of Steve, and I know he sent it out to some members of the committee that had questions that guided the conversation, and hopefully it tells the story that answers those questions. I'm going to give you just a quick couple of baseline data points. Dr. Clinch will cover these in detail as he goes, but that's in several weeks. So I just wanted to give you a baseline, some economic data just to you know, set the stage here. Jobs in the county continue to grow. You know, we add about 1,000, 1,500 jobs each year, and that trend continues. Oh, gee. There we go. Where are they going? Professional and business services, our largest job category, trade, transportation, utilities, education, health services. This is how our job composition is and where they're growing, the types of industries that are growing. The three that are growing most quickly lately, professional and business services, education and health, and leisure and hospitality. No, I'm sorry, construction is the third one, in that order. Construction, interesting. Sure that'll come up. Our unemployment rate continues to you know, be low. I mean, this is going back, our unemployment rates were, you know, this low about 10 years ago, historically low averages, and are among the lowest in the state. We are either the lowest or we tie with Montgomery County for being the lowest in the state. Here you see how we compare over the past 3 years to the state and to the United States. We're going to talk about commercial real estate conditions. Here you see some redevelopment, some industrial, some downtown, and Maple Lawn. This is what the commercial real estate makeup looks like. You've got about 75, 76 million square feet of commercial product in the county. Majority of that, the red is the industrial, followed by office, flex, and retail. What's driving that? Recent projects in downtown Columbia. You've seen a lot of activity over the past year in downtown Columbia, and thank goodness. And I'll come back to that point in a bit. Commercial development in Maple Lawn. If Howard County is nationally a center of cybersecurity, Maple Lawn is the center of that bullseye. There is a growing concentration of cybersecurity specific firms in Maple Lawn. Maple Lawn is about 80% built out. They've only got about 2 buildings left to go in the current plan. It's wildly popular. Almost as soon as they build a building, it is pre-leased and they're on to their next building. Only about 200,000 square feet left to go in Maple Lawn out of their 1 million square foot plan. And this summer you'll actually see a hotel. You might drive by and see it under construction. The long-awaited hotel in Maple Lawn is on the way. Let's talk about vacancy. Vacancy is the amount of open space across our various categories. Office, industrial, flex. Does everybody know what a flex building is? It's a kind of a box that could be an office, it could be a warehouse, it could be manufacturing. It's usually single story. Also an important part of the Maple Lawn story. They're done. They're done with their flex. It's full, and they have none left to build in the flex portion of Maple Lawn. And retail. Typically, if you're below 10%, that's a healthy vacancy rate. That is typically when new construction developers start thinking about putting new products on the market. You want to have something on the shelf to sell. So our rates continue to decline. But even with the recent addition of office product to the market in Maple Lawn and downtown Columbia, we've ticked up a bit, but not as much as you would expect. So still very healthy vacancy rates and amongst the lowest in the region. Collateral to vacancy is absorption and net absorption. So if somebody moves out, that's negative absorption. When somebody moves in, that's positive absorption. So you want to see your lines going up. And this is actually the retail. We actually did revise some numbers. It's actually a little more. It actually is positive in 15. But you see how we're adding. We continue to fill space. Is basically what this story is telling. We continue to fill space in our office, industrial, flex, and retail categories. New commercial construction, value of permits. continues to be at healthy rates. I mean, this is representing a lot of the, commercial investment that is driving that new construction.
How much, if you do back to that, that's commercial.
Mhm.
Residential, do you track that?
Let's see, we talk about residential, when we talk about it in terms of accessible base, I don't know if we do have the numbers, it's not in part of the presentation, but we do track the residential permit construction. So, do we have that number, Mark?
Residential dipped down a little bit in 17, and largely what we're seeing in that trend is the volume of residential being driven by multifamily permits. And that gets real spiky, because you get a couple of buildings coming in, and it's a big number of units. So we had that occurrence in 2016 with a number of multifamily projects coming onto the market.
And for folks in the room, Mark Thompson is our Vice President of Business Development and leads our research group. And also in the back is Vern Thompson, and he's our Executive Vice President, runs our business development.
How do they, I'm just curious, on the multifamily, how do they get hit? And I realize like Metro, very little into the schools versus others on Route 1. How do they get hit in terms of the excise tax for development versus a residential development?
I'm not really sure, Steve. I don't know, we'd have to look into that.
Well,
How do they get hit, do you mean?
What do they get charged? I mean,
it's for, that's a good question. There's a distinction between industrial and office. Office is a higher excise tax rate.
He's asking multifamily and single family.
Oh, multifamily and single family? Same, per square foot. Yeah.
But it's, I mean, but ours is significantly lower than, as for instance, Anne Arundel counties, isn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
So,
But, what goes into some of these numbers, obviously some of the Maple Lawn downtown commercial development, but also there was some of the other ones that are there are even like the parking garage at the college is, part of that commercial number. So we were asked to comment on retail, the future of retail. It's a bit of a mixed bag. With household incomes over $100,000, retailers know that there is a lot of disposable discretionary income here. But it's trending towards, I'll call it experiential retail, dining, entertainment, places that you can't order a night out on Amazon. So, that's where you're seeing retail start to trend. And when you look at the mall, you're starting to see, Sears is under redevelopment right now, right? It is going to a dining entertainment type of use in part. So that's where retail tends to trend, but not completely. I mean, there's still going to be retail for fashion, home furnishings, convenience type of things that are not going to be driving retail. Groceries, electronics, commodity fashion. Most of the things that you can do Amazon. So. It's driving the redevelopment of the village centers, right? The village centers are, not built for the old style retail anymore. They're a redevelopment scheme that you see working in Wild Lake and Hickory Ridge. Long Reach will be a redevelopment that won't be driven by so much retail, but more of a live, work, convenience retail. So, accessible base, we talk a lot about that in this group. This is our commercial accessible base. It continues to grow every year, good thing, right? Its average growth is about 3 to 4% each year, steadily grows. But we still maintain about a 17% of the total accessible base because our residential base continues to grow and keep pace with it as well. So they're trending positively, but the relative share of each tends to stay the same. Yes, sir.
Do you have projections for beyond 2017 on these figures?
Probably it'll continue to trend in, at about a 3 to 4% growth.
Do you have some basis for that?
Just looking at the history of going back, how it has grown over the years. That's about how it tends to grow. So it's, you know, what we talk about, how do we grow it to 20%? When they're tracking and growing at about the same rate every year, it's hard to gain on your share of commercial versus residential assessment. Did some rough math on what does that look like? What would it take to go from 17% to 20%? And if you assume that the residential base is going to grow at about 3% a year, the commercial base would have to grow at about 7% a year. And let's just shoot out 5 years. Let's project 5 years out. If we were to double our rate of growth in the commercial sector from 3.5 to 7%, we have to do that for about 5 years. It would take about $3 billion more of accessible base. And to put that into like real terms, you're familiar with the MedStar building downtown? It would take about 72 of those buildings in a 5-year period to get our accessible base to 20%. So going to 20% it would be nice, but it would take a lot. I mean, that's a 200,000 square foot building. We just saw what our office absorption typically is.
Do we get in the tip, I mean, the valuations of commercial now, that may change. I heard some pretty dark things yesterday in terms of real estate. But it's certainly the valuations have been going up at a much higher rate than the residential. How much does that impact the growth?
It's the valuation of commercial real estate based on or occupancy, right? So, I mean, having a building's great, it might not assess what it should be if it's an empty building, right? So it's not just the construction of a commercial project, it's the occupancy of it as well. So, we haven't gotten that deep into the math of what does that mean to the base. We take a little more science to figure that out, but, with residential creeping at, 3% and our existing base, kind of keeping pace. Even if it is valued higher, it's still kind of trending along the same rate.
Larry, APL is probably our biggest, or second biggest governmental land user, and they're off the rolls, right? And the 3 buildings they're running across the street, if they take them over, those 3 go off the rolls. So that's probably making the attainment of the goal pretty difficult when your largest user is off the roll.
Well, it's part of the problem of Baltimore City as well. They do a payment in lieu though.
Yeah, but they have a pilot for the county?
Yeah. I don't know if that increases with their real estate holdings or if it's a fixed amount. They do offset some of it. Just a quick glance at some of the projects that we worked on this past year, and the reason we put this up here is just to give you a sense of the diversity of the projects we work on. Food-based, and this, don't tell anybody, we haven't quite announced that yet, but that's a manufacturing facility. It's not where you're going to buy lunch today. Manufacturing, distribution, technology, healthcare technology, cyber technology, a variety of projects that are part of our portfolio. Great little success story out of Ellicott City, Main Street, River House Pizza. Came back from the flood and now is expanding into a new space in 4th Street. So just a little sample of some of the things that we're working on. Some of our metrics that we track, those projects and others contributed to 1,500 new jobs coming to the county this year. Job retention numbers we also track. Retention of a company is key to us as well. Down a bit from last year, in part number of projects, but also our staff was largely dedicated to Ellicott City recovery. So we had just fewer feet on the street countywide because we were focused on Ellicott City. The other metric that we track is capital investment of those projects that we do work on. And again, kind of correspondingly, we were just resource constrained and staff deployed for Ellicott City, but the projects that we did work on added about $29 million in capital investment.
Hey, Larry.
Yes,
It's,
sir.
I mean, it's fair to say, too, that we had an extraordinary 2016 with Coastal Sunbelt.
That's a good point,
And a
yeah.
number of other projects that really spiked those 2016 numbers, which again, and they have to take.
That's a good
into
point.
consideration.
129 million of capital investment, Coastal Sunbelt moved out of their 170,000 square foot facility into a 300,000 square foot facility. And that really bumped, that was one of the major projects of 16. That's a good point. Small business support. We are one of the 8 fund managers in the state that manage the video lottery terminal loan fund. We have been managing that fund. We're in our 4th year right now, and we have approved 39 loans, almost $6 million of lending on the street. It has leveraged another almost $10 million of additional funding, private funding. Retained 380 jobs, helped create 335 new jobs. Where we're seeing that activity, manufacturing, food production, IT, and it's doing what it's supposed to do, going to minority, women, or veteran-owned businesses. Yes, ma'am.
What's the average interest rate on those loans?
About 5%.
3 to 5.
About 5. We're not competing with banks. So we are more risk tolerant than a bank is. So these are loans that typically don't get funded from a bank. But we're also not that lender of last resort and no docs necessary type of lender either. We're trying to be prudent, and loans are collateralized and guaranteed. So you have to be somewhat credit worthy, and deploying that fund as we can. Yeah. More on small business support. We also operate our Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship, which sees about 8,500 visitors a year. We counsel over 500 clients through our SBDC and SCORE counselors, Small Business Development Center, and Service Corps of Retired Executives. Is that it? We also run a Howard Tech Council, which has 265 member companies. That basically is trying to connect the technology and service community, giving them a forum for education, leadership, and engagement. Our Center for Entrepreneurship is currently home to 23 resident companies, small companies, technology-based, largely, and 22 affiliate companies, which means they don't have an office there, but they use the services, the conference rooms, and the mailbox. Our differentiator is our entrepreneurs in residence. Those are 3 been there, done that entrepreneurs that mentor and coach these companies through their early growth stage. Just a sample of some of the companies that are in there. We had a graduation this year, Vita Health. 3 years ago, they started with 2 employees. They left this year with 20 employees. They are a medical compliance software technology. Vitus Vet, electronic medical health records for your pet. A huge industry. He's the first guy doing it. Has signed a major contract with a large insurance provider. You're going to start seeing him. If you have a pet, you'll see that logo in your veterinarian's office. Collectively, these companies have raised almost over $250,000 in state TEDCO early venture funding, which has leveraged another about $1 million of private investment. This is where our small business activity growth is coming from. One of the things we did about this time last year, we didn't have the results in yet, but you often ask, why does the county invest in economic development. Why should we invest in economic development? Based on those projects that we work on either through our business development unit or through our Center for Entrepreneurship, for every dollar invested in us by the county, we return $5.68. If you have any problems with the math of that, ask that.
Hey Larry, how did your
Yeah.
success, one of the things I think you talked about last year is the incubator, when those companies grow and
Yeah.
move out,
Yeah.
they move out of the county. What's your success rate of that?
Some do. We looked back, we reached back to about 2010. 90% of the companies that have left us are still in the state, 50% of them are still in the county.
Any change since last year in terms of?
The graduates that we have exited have stayed in the county. We haven't had, 3 or 4 exits have stayed in the county. You know, we debated, you know, should we put hooks into people, like if you come through our incubator, you gotta stay in the county. You could, but then your population, your funnel kind of narrows, and you have fewer companies to choose from. So we'd rather have a bigger funnel, get them in, and get them to stay versus constricting them, forcing them to stay. So, and we think, 50% is better than none. We did our strategic plan last year, and I spent a large time at last year's presentation to this group going through the strategic plan. It's on our website if you want to see it. I'll just remind you of the 8 key findings of that strategic plan. And I'm almost done, Steve, so bear with me. But basically, the plan pointed out that, you know, Howard County has had a great recipe and we have a great many strengths, but there are some real threats facing us: transportation and federal spending. Disruption in economic development. They told us to focus on our existing companies. There are fewer attraction projects out there, so stop trying to chase the middle. Middle market is the sweet spot. It told us to focus on the small and emerging growth companies. Helping a company go from 10 employees to 30 is where your job growth is going to come from. It said we lack a place that is conducive to innovation. We talked about talent being attracted to urban cores or live, work, play, connected communities. Transit is a weakness for Howard County. We have a transit connectivity gap. The export and foreign direct investment market is key. And suburban poverty continues to be a trend in the region. So what that led to was 4 core strategies for us. Business retention and expansion. This is basically working with our existing businesses, providing support to help them grow. Getting better at knowing ourselves, doing data research and messaging better so that you can promote yourself better and your services. Tap into the innovation that is resident here. And when you do those 3 things well, your attraction story becomes much better, much easier. Where we're going with this, we're going to continue to support the growth of downtown Columbia and commercial hubs like Maple Lawn as a cyber play. And let me talk about Tenable for just a few minutes. You've heard a lot lately about Amazon. You've heard, why that was why everybody was, chasing Amazon. I want you to think of Tenable as our Amazon. It is our Under Armour. This company started in the county in 2002 with 3 founders. In 2015, they had the largest private equity raise of any cybersecurity company, $250 million. We have worked with them twice in the past 3 years on expansion projects. This company is now, 700 employees. They just signed a lease to move to downtown Columbia. What we need to do, what's going to drive our economy is 10 more of these. Fostering, being the catapult for companies like this to stay and grow in the county. Now, Tenable's a great story in that, Howard County residents started a company and it is now taking 200,000 square feet in downtown Columbia. It's also a cautionary tale because they're moving from Gateway to downtown. Had we not had downtown ready for this company would be leaving the state. For them, it's a talent attraction issue. They needed a place where they could attract the talent that they needed to drive their company. Gateway was not the place for it. Lack of amenities, lack of housing, lack of transit connectivity, that became an issue for them. And if downtown wasn't ready, Northern Virginia is where they'd be going. They told us that. The delay in the TIF debate put this project in jeopardy because they were uncertain about, is downtown really going to be ready for it? So a lot of lessons we can learn from our Amazon, our Under Armour. This becomes the brand of Howard County. It's a great story. If this company goes public, people will know nationally more about Howard County. Where's that company? Oh, it's in Howard County. So there's a lot of great takeaways from the case study of Tenable. That's why we're talking about Gateway a lot. Gateway, we got to position it to be better than it is. And Tenable's not the only company that's saying Gateway could be better. It's hard to get folks to come to Gateway. The kind of talent we're attracting. What do you mean? I gotta drive to work. Where am I going to get I got to get in my car to go get lunch? Are you kidding me? I got a lot of choices. I'm a 20, 30 something smart computer science guy. I got a lot of choices. You're a nice company, but and that is the war for talent. When you talk about where are we going to grow, Gateway is 920 acres large, and 60% of it is open space. 20% of it's parking, 15% of it is buildings. Where can we grow? Gateway is where we can grow. There is ample opportunity for better connectivity, better transit, better road network, and more density. So when we talk about our constraints as land availability, Howard County is becoming a redevelopment play. Gateway is a huge opportunity for us. We believe that by leveraging the institutions that are there, UNBC Training Center is there, Johns Hopkins is there, Loyola is across the street, Tenable is there for a little while longer, Oracle, Merkle. I mean, the companies that are inside of that park are rich, full of talent, and we have to leverage that. We have to connect them because nobody knows their neighbors inside of Gateway right now. It's a big giant neighborhood. They're all cul-de-sacs. People pull into their building and they don't leave, and then they, at 5 o'clock they leave. So we have to connect those companies and leverage their intellectual capital. That's also driving us to our innovation center. As the courthouse project continues, we have to move out of where we are because we're in the Dorsey building, where our MCE is. We're moving into the Gateway building. And agencies are moving out of the Gateway building largely into the new nonprofit center. So that opens up 3 floors in the Gateway building, which will double our size, our square footage for our innovation center. I don't want to double the size of my incubator, but what I do want to put into the innovation center are all of the things that it takes to drive innovation, other educational collaboration, other educational institutions, anchor tenants, strategic alliances with APL and University of Maryland. It's the intellectual capital that we can put into this building to foster the small business growth. And that's going to be, I'm telling you, the differentiator for Howard County. We're going to continue to do great things in downtown. We're going to continue to attract industrial development on Route 1. But when the question is, what's going to set Howard County apart? It's going to be what we do in our innovation center, growing 10 more tenements.
Gateway.
Yes, sir.
She's going to be efficient. She worked with Mallory, I know she. In the gateway, can you just, 3 or 4, if you will, bullet points of the key things we need to do to move that forward? What are the things we need to achieve, and where are we in that process?
So right now, you've got relatively few property owners inside a gateway. Cops, Howard Hughes, Mickey Abrams, and Reed. You've got relatively few property owners who are motivated to do something here. So you got to capitalize on that. A master plan, you know, what is the transportation network? How can we densify this? You've got to kickstart that now because you've got a good market, you've got motivated property owners, and you've got a good economy. You're going to have all those things 2 years from now, 3 years from now? It's hard to say. So master planning it, getting that plan in place. It's going to need more transportation connections. You know how long it takes to get transportation projects happening. You know, it's almost like that. Let's have a plan that we can execute. Well, right now we've got, we actually had property owners contribute to a high-level conceptual design of what an innovation district starts to look like. They're actually willing to contribute to this master plan because they see, we don't want Gateway, if we, you know, Gateway will become the, you know, dinosaur business park that you see sometimes around the Washington Beltway particularly, lots of buildings full of empty glass, because why? The talent wants to be in places where it's a live, work, play type of environment. This is a prime opportunity for us, but we've got to get that process started. And I say, you know, downtown Columbia, it was approved in what, 2010? How many years before that did it really start, right? And we're just now talking about the success of downtown Columbia. They're only 10% into their plan, right? But it took, you know, call it 10 years or so for downtown Columbia to really execute. Let's get started, because if we wait, it's going to take, you know, 10 years to really get Gateway
So
going.
relative to the let's get started,
Yeah.
where are we to let's get started? Other than that, you've got 4 owners that have a desire because, one, it financially makes sense to
Yep.
it. But where are we in that where are we in the process of having a master plan?
Well, we have a high-level conceptual plan completed. We are in line to begin the planning process as it relates to the DPZ formal process of it. That won't begin right now until maybe 2019, right? I would suggest we need to give that department resources to get started on this so we can start that plan this year. Because it takes a year to do a plan, for God's sake. So by 2019, can we be executing on the plan? Absolutely. Let's give them the resources it takes to start doing this. We've got a lot of energy. We've got a high-level conceptual plan. We've got some ideas. We've got motivated property owners, but we don't have a plan. We should begin with it.
Hey Larry, you may want to mention too the capital investment in the Gateway building itself.
Yeah, I mean, to turn our innovation building into an innovation center, it's an old building. It's hard to follow Jack's story with that, but I mean, it's going to take some investment to turn this into an innovation center. It's an old 1990, circa 1990 building. And to foster that kind of collaboration, it's going to need some investment. We're looking at some private investment, but we're going to be talking to state and county about some capital investment as well. It's not going to take much, but we do have a lot to compete with regionally and nationally if we want to be the innovation center, create those kind of things. Good? Good?
Okay, we're going to run 10 minutes over. Not your fault. Good. But no, I know you. We're going to have a live presentation.
Have to let's go live. Go back to the library.
Thank you for a good time to talk to you about the library system. For those of you who are new, we are not actually a county agency. I'm sorry, can you not hear me really well?
Well, there's a lot going on back there.
Oh, okay. I'm also getting over the flu, so I can't tell how loud I'm speaking. We are a quasi-governmental entity. We're actually governed by a 7-member board of trustees who sets policy for the library system. A lot of our personnel policies are dictated by the state education statute and the annotated code, very much like the school systems are. And we are a tax-exempt 501c1 entity. We do get 88% of our funds from the county. We get a little bit from our own revenue generation and from grants that we go after. The State Department of Education also gives us about, at this point, $1 million in operating revenue. That number has gone down a little bit. 3 years ago, the state put in a new funding formula for monies to libraries across the state, and for all intents and purposes, penalized places like Howard County and Montgomery County because they felt these were wealthy counties and did not need the state funding that a Wycomico or a Garrett County needed. So that number has dropped a little bit, so we've had to push a little bit more towards the county to get our funding. Of that amount that we are asking for this year for the $24 million, 21.8 would be from the county. We make our presentation to the county and ask them to give us what our board has approved, and we go that way. Very similar again to the school system. The board approves the budget, and then there's some back and forth and so forth. Our operating budget covers our materials and content, our instruction, and a lot of our community-driven events. And then underlying a lot of all of that is our staffing cost. As with any organization, our human resources are our most expensive cost. We have recently benefits, both retirement and health benefits costs keep going up, so we have to keep adding to that. We've had new surcharges with the new state minimum wage law going into place in the past couple of years. We have had to add money to that to cover a lot of our minimum wage employees, so we've had extra costs along those lines. You'll see a very small indication there for equipment as part of our operating budget, and I will tell you that a lot of that has to do not just with technology, but security technology. It's kind of a sad sign of the times, if you will, but with security cameras, we've had to add security guards in addition to the police who help us out. They partner with us at several other branches to provide just basic security for our customers and our staff. It's certainly more concerned at some branches than at others. And I think we've made a lot of headway, for instance, at our East Columbia branch, which is under renovation right now, where we were having a lot of problems for a while, but I think we've really turned the corner on that and made it a much more inviting, safe place to be. But that being said, it has cost us a lot of money as far as the equipment for security and also just manpower, security guards and so forth, not only for the buildings, but patrolling the parking lots and that kind of thing to keep our customers and our staff safe. Our content, we have about 1 million items, and that's physical and e-content throughout the library system. You can use our e-content both in our branches and from home with your library card. And a lot of this e-content, it gets incredible heavy use. A lot of really interesting things. We've just gotten a new digital archive for the Time and Life magazines, which school children use. A lot of people just like to peruse them and so forth. We have an online video database where you can, for artwork, whether it's music, you want to learn to play the guitar, learn to watercolor, you can go and punch in your library card and bring up videos, instructional videos on that kind of thing. And along with those other things, we have lynda.com for the business community. We have all kinds of testing sites from everything from your learner's permit up to, the medical school admissions test and so forth, practicing for all that kind of thing. They're very popular, they get heavy use, but they are expensive tools to keep and maintain. They tend to go up every year. A couple of things. Howard County's population is incredibly culturally diverse. We get a lot of use of things like Press Reader, where you can get newspapers, magazines from all over the world in native languages, but then you can choose it and then translate it into any other language that you want to read it in. It's a lot of use. Learning to speak language, Rosetta Stone is available to everyone. So those are the kinds of things that we pay a lot of money for, but they get incredible use and we get great feedback on them. We partner with the school system to provide a live, real-time homework help tutoring service, basically. For everything from getting a critique of a composition to help with calculus on whiteboards, doing active work right with the student. It's available Mondays from 2 p.m. through Sundays at midnight each day. Howard County has the second highest use of any jurisdiction in the country of this live homework help module, and you think, that's fantastic. It is, but they charge us for that. The more you use it, the more you get charged. We don't want to lose it, it's a great source, but that's one of the things that we pay for. If a child was to try to go in individually, and you can do that, it's a commercial website, and say, I need help with my calculus and do it, it would cost them several $100s per hour of tutoring session. So this is something they're able to do just with their library card. And I'll also mention, because we partner with the school on a lot of things, we have just finished an initiative where we've gotten all of the Howard County Public School System students their own library card tied to their student ID. So they're always able to access all of this content wherever they are in the schools, at home, and so forth. But we wanted to make sure that all of the school children had access to it, and we're very pleased to have done that. So now we have about 50,000 students with their library card ready to work with. One of our big things is our children's classes. Not to toot our own horn, but I will. We have the highest attendance of children's classes of any library system in the state. It was close to 250,000 last year. I like to think it's based on our quality instructors, our adherence to early literacy initiatives, and our inclusiveness. We offer all kinds of different courses, some for students who may be on the autism spectrum, for low stimulus and that kind of thing, right up to all kinds of things, teaching basic literacy skills, alliteration, and so forth. We can't offer enough classes. We have waiting lists on a lot of them, so this is something we offer a lot and what our staff do a lot of. We also obviously have classes for teens and adults as well. We do a lot with our STEM initiative. We have virtual reality, we do nanotechnology. Over the summer, we do a lot of tech camps for the students. Very popular, and again, because we only have so many staff and so many venues, we have to curtail them somewhat. We would like to be able to expand them at some point, but that's another example of some of the things we do. In the community, we do a lot of instructional events, but also just engagement events. We sometimes just see a need and go for it. Howard County students never had a way to get to the National Spelling Bee. So we initiated the Howard County Spelling Bee. It's incredibly popular, and Sundef, right here, has been a winner the past 2 years, and he got to the semifinals last year in the National Bee, so he really made a difference. Our Battle of the Books will be coming up in April. It's just a wild ride. It's not a free-for-all. We will have 1,700 fifth graders involved this year, answering questions about literature and books and so forth. They have been practicing since November, and they get jazzed up, they dress up in costumes and so forth. One of the things we do once we stop enrollment for it is field calls from all the parents and teachers saying, well, my team didn't get in, so you have to put them in. And I've had to explain to them that we've reserved 6 high schools through the school system, we can't take anymore. The fire marshal will come after us if we try to put more people in it. So again, another wild thing. And if you've never had a chance to see it, I highly recommend going to watch, because to see kids this excited about reading and progressing is just a ton of fun. Some other initiatives we do out in the community. We've partnered with Animal Control, actually the police department, because that's where it falls under. We have elementary and middle school students who actually go into our animal shelter and read to the pets there to try to socialize them, make them more adoptable, used to human handling and so forth. That's full right now. We have to wait till we get another class going. Opposite side of the coin, we try to work with our young elementary school students, mainly trying to get the third graders up to reading level. And they read to dogs who are very non-judgmental. But I mean, children who have a reading problem are very embarrassed a lot of times about that and unwilling to practice. So we get them to come in and they read to the dogs constantly, and it's a drop-in, and those classes are full every Saturday morning. So just another example. Our Enchanted Garden at the Miller Branch, sustainable teaching garden, we do environmental, health and nutrition classes there. That's always full. Even in the wintertime, I think we do a count of how many people go through. We've had like thousands of people just wandering through and looking at the different things to learn. So another great thing. Our Accessibility Initiative, we did the longest table this year. Getting Howard County to sit down with 300 of their neighbors and engage about the community, what's good about the community, how can we improve the community. We like to do those kind of things. Our customers ask us to do those kinds of things. And we're happy to be in a community engagement center. So, leave them there. Under Cultural Connections, we partner with CA to do 2 culture fests every year. This past one we did was Oceana. It was a very lively group. We even had some Aboriginal haka dance groups, and we had a huge attendance. Over 1,000 people came to see that culture fest. Our Project Literacy is an initiative we're very proud of. We currently have a waiting list for it because it's an adult basic education initiative where we do try to teach English, also basic math skills and so forth. We help students there get on the path to citizenship and help with their citizenship tests. What we work with, because the college does some work in the adult basic education area too. A lot of our students are referred from the college because a lot of the students we have in Project Literacy are not actually literate in their primary language. It's not just a matter of they can't read English. In the language they speak, they are not able to read in that language either. So we start from the very beginning and start just reading fundamentals and so forth. We usually get about 6 high school graduates every semester, which we're very pleased about. And we currently have about 40 students on the waiting list. So we would love to be able to expand that. When we reopen the central branch, we have more space. We have more tutors working with them now, but it's always a need and always a high demand for us. This is a blatant ad. I'm here to ask you. One of our sources of revenue is our fundraising. Our Evening in the Stacks Gala is on February 24th. It's a ton of fun. You would say, library, how could they have fun? We do have a lot of fun, and it's a great party. Tickets are available now. See me if I can give you any information on that. So, I'm sorry, that's just like blatant fun. Capital projects. In the FY19 budget, we are only asking for $850,000, and that's, I'll show you, for the Glenwood branch, which is now 20 years old. And it's mainly just to do some recarpeting, change the surface on some of the counters that have worn off, basically, from people leaning on them and pushing things across. And some of the tables have also lost their tops because it just gets heavy use. One thing about being a public building is that we do have people in and out all the time. Last year we had about 2 million visits to our branches. And that's, even with we had 2 branches, 2 of our bigger branches closed right now, operating just out of small trailers, which we're very grateful for. But it certainly has knocked our numbers down. But even with that, we're still about 2 million visits a year. We will be opening Elbridge in March. Very excited about that. The community is tons excited about that. It was a $30 million capital project, probably $20 million for the library. There's also a connected senior center, which will all be part of the Charles Ecker campus on Route 1. In about 2 weeks, we'll be opening the renovated East Columbia branch. Again, some new flooring, some new surfaces. We have turned the one old admin area of the building into a teen zone and homework center. Our East Columbia branch is probably the branch where we have the most number of children, after-school children, unattended children in our branch, literally probably hundreds every day. The schools that feed into there tend to be Title I, a little bit challenged, so we work with those children very heavily. It'll be great to have a space dedicated to them, a homework center. We're very pleased with a number of the initiatives, the teen time and the homework centers. The GPA of the kids has gone up, and that's very encouraging for us. Then, as I mentioned, Glenwood, which is hard to believe, but approaching 20 years of age, it just needs some updating, and that's our one capital project for this year, because we've been very lucky with Elbridge and East Columbia prior to this, and then, of course, the Miller Branch and Savage also got renovated, so we're very thankful for all the capital funds we've had. And that's my brief presentation from the library.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the Evening in the Stacks is a great event. If you haven't attended, you should be there.
The literary discussion will be
Josh.
Big Bob Dylan.
In previous iterations of this presentation, there was talk about a southeast branch. Are you still looking for sites for that?
We have it in our capital budget a couple years out. We also know that the county's capital funds are somewhat stretched at this point. We would like to entertain it. It is certainly an area, well, as Larry is pointing out, Maple Lawn has certainly grown, so that whole, we call it the southeast, the Clarksville, Fulton, is growing. And we have had customers asking for a branch there. It'll be a matter of finding some funding for that. It's still in our capital budget. We'll put in for the 2021 capital budget.
So we're about 15 over, but if I recall, in the first meeting, we were about 10. We had surplus. So I think I'm only 5 minutes old. We have a 2-hour meeting next week, 2 hours, 7:30 to 9:30. We have a presentation, so to get the stuff out from now, I won't have it ready for these emails.
Next time is that public safety agencies and also health and human.
Corrections wasn't on the Dropbox, is that right?
That's all right.
No, it wasn't because they brought it in today. I will be up shortly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ralph emailed me instead of you. I'm gonna let him know.
See you next week.